There's a stretch of wilderness in the Pacific Northwest known as Rotor Ridge. It's an isolated, windswept range that even seasoned hikers avoid. The few who do venture there speak of hearing faint, mechanical whispers echoing through the canyons, though no machines are visible for miles. Most people chalk it up to the wind playing tricks, but locals know better. They call it the helicopter's graveyard. This story isn't about legends or hearsay. It's about what happened to me, something I'll carry with me forever. I'm a search and rescue pilot. It's not glamorous, but it's vital. We get calls at all hours to save hikers, climbers, and campers who overestimate their abilities. Rotor Ridge was one of those places that even we hated to fly over. The wind currents were erratic, and the dense fog seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Still, when the call came through about a missing research team, we didn't have a choice. There were 3 of them, geologists sent to study seismic activity in the region. Their last communication was garbled but frantic. Something about an unexpected tremor and losing their GPS. That was 2 days ago, and the weather had only worsened since. My co-pilot Harris and I were the only ones crazy enough to volunteer for the mission. The flight started uneventfully. We took off just before dawn, hoping the morning light would give us better visibility. As we approached Rotor Ridge, the terrain turned jagged, with steep cliffs and shadowed ravines. Fog rolled in like ghostly tendrils, obscuring everything below. Harris pointed to the instruments. Wind's picking up. We should call it if it gets worse. I nodded but kept my eyes on the horizon. The ridge loomed ahead, its peaks disappearing into the clouds. As we drew closer, my radio crackled. At first, I thought it was interference, but then a voice broke through, low and faint like it was coming from far away. Help, trap. I exchanged a glance with Harris. You hear that? He nodded, frowning. That's not from the base. Different frequency. I adjusted the dials, trying to pinpoint the source, but the voice faded into static. Then the fog thickened, wrapping around the helicopter like a shroud. The instruments started to act up. Altimeter readings jumped erratically, and the GPS blinked out completely. Switching to manual, I said, gripping the controls tighter. The helicopter bucked as a sudden gust of wind slammed into us. Harris cursed. This isn't normal. We need to turn back. Before I could respond, the voice returned, louder this time. Down here, can't escape. It sent a chill through me, not just because it was clearer but because it sounded off. The tone was distorted, almost metallic, like it wasn't entirely human. We spotted the first wreck about 20 minutes later. It was an old military helicopter, its rusted frame barely visible through the fog. Harris leaned forward, squinting. That's been here for years. What's it doing on this ridge? I didn't answer, too focused on keeping us steady in the unpredictable winds. But as we circled the wreck, I noticed something strange. The rotor blades, though bent and broken, were slowly spinning as if caught in a faint breeze. Yet the air around us was completely still. The voice crackled over the radio again. Join us? Enough of this, Harris said, reaching for the controls. We're heading back. But the helicopter didn't respond. The controls were sluggish, almost like something was fighting against me. The fog thickened further, and the temperature inside the cockpit dropped sharply. I could see my breath hanging in the air. Then came the sound, a deep, rhythmic thumping, like distant rotor blades cutting through the sky. It wasn't ours. It was coming from somewhere below. Harris paled. That can't be, nothing else is flying out here. But the sound grew louder, closer. The instruments went haywire, and the helicopter lurched violently to the side. I fought to regain control, but it was like the air itself had turned against us. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw shapes moving in the fog, dark silhouettes that flickered in and out of sight, always circling. And then we went down. And then we went down. The crash wasn't as bad as it could have been, thanks to the dense undergrowth cushioning our fall. Harris and I stumbled out of the wreck, dazed but alive. The fog was suffocating now, so thick we could barely see the helicopter behind us. The sound of rotor blades continued, echoing around us, though nothing was visible. Harris grabbed my arm. We need to move. Whatever this is, we're not safe here. We pushed through the fog, the ground uneven and treacherous. The air was filled with strange noises, Distant whispers, metallic groans, and the occasional screech of something unnatural. Then we found the other wrecks. They were everywhere, scattered across the ridge like forgotten tombstones. Military helicopters, civilian models, even one so old I couldn't identify them. Each one was in various states of decay, yet their rotors moved slowly as if alive. And from each came a faint whisper, too quiet to make out but undeniably there. Harris stopped abruptly, staring at one wreck. This is my old unit? I frowned. What are you talking about? He pointed to the tail number. I flew that bird in Afghanistan. It went down during a mission. Everyone on board died. Before I could respond, the whispers grew louder, converging into a chorus of voices that surrounded us. Stay, join us, don't leave. Harris backed away, shaking his head. This isn't real. It can't be. The ground beneath us began to vibrate, a low rumble that made my teeth ache. From the shadows of the wrecks emerged figures, shadowy forms with indistinct features, their eyes glowing faintly. They moved slowly, deliberately, surrounding us. I grabbed Harris. Run? We bolted, weaving through the wreckage as the figures closed in. The whispers turned into wails, a deafening cacophony that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The fog twisted around us, making it impossible to tell which way we were going. Finally, we stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood a single intact helicopter, its rotors spinning silently. It looked brand new, completely out of place among the ruins. The door was open as if inviting us in. Harris hesitated. This feels wrong. But the figures were closing in, their forms becoming sharper, more menacing. I grabbed his arm. We don't have a choice. We climbed inside, slamming the door behind us. The controls lit up immediately and the engine roared to life. Without thinking, I grabbed the stick and pulled up. As we lifted off, the figures stopped their advance, watching us from the edge of the clearing. The fog thinned and for a moment I thought we'd escaped. But then I looked at the instruments. The altimeter read 0 no matter how high we climbed. The GPS displayed nonsense coordinates. And the radio was filled with whispers, each one speaking directly to me. You're one of us now? I looked at Harris, but he was gone. In his seat was a shadowy figure, its glowing eyes fixed on me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The helicopter shuddered, the controls seizing up, and the fog closed in once more. The last thing I remember is the sound of rotor blades, echoing endlessly as the world faded to black. If you ever hear about Rotor Ridge, stay away. The helicopters there aren't just wrecks, they're traps. And the voices you hear aren't the wind. They're the souls of those who came before you, calling out for company in their endless, mechanical purgatory.